Let me welcome Martin George. This morning he joins me on the Zoom line, and of course this morning he's wearing the cap of the Tobago Business Chamber president. So in that regard, we discuss business and we discuss more so the THA budget, the allocation, and the developments coming out of yesterday's reading there by the Chief Sec in the THA, in the House, as it were. Good morning, Martin. Great to see you as per usual.
Yeah, hi, good morning to you, Jason, and good morning to all your viewers on CNC3, and good morning, Trinidad, and a very special good morning to Tobago.
Martin, I was looking at some of the major talking points coming out yesterday, and it seems to me that the Chief Sec, and I want to touch on this first before we head across to the allocations. The Chief Sec is calling for constitutional change, more so amendments to Section 113 in the Constitution. I want to find out if that is viable and if indeed his statement of, he coined it as, let me get I took the note, he said constitutional colonization based on it's a certain amount being allocated to Tobago. Of course, he wants more based on the time, the settings, and the different challenges facing Tobago. But this whole claim of constitutional colonization and the amendment of Section 113 to make this possible, is that a viable claim, and is that something that could actually happen, Martin?
Well, the thing is, Jason, it's a nice talking point and it's a nice soundbite for his supporters and for many Tobagonians. They love to buy into this narrative of being oppressed. And, you know, they love to play the victim in that regard. But if one is to really disaggregate the numbers and do the analysis, pound for pound and per capita, when you consider the population of Tobago and the allocation that it gets in the national budget, it is actually more per capita than the budget for Trinidad. So, you know, I mean, while it is, as I say, a nice soundbite and a nice talking point, and it certainly grabs the attention of his followers because they love when you stand up and say, well, you're fighting for Tobago and, you know, you're fighting against the oppressors in Trinidad. And, you know, it's a very nice narrative for basically the political hustings. But the reality is quite far from that, because you're talking about greater allocations, but yet still you do not have the fiscal accountability and financial responsibility that comes with it. Look at what happened a couple of weeks ago before the Joint Select Committee, where you had the senators having to chastise and criticize the representatives from the THA who came there so woefully unprepared, unable to answer questions, bereft of all relevant information. You know, they were not able to answer simple questions such as, how many visitors have you had for the year thus far? Basic, simple things. If you're talking about a tourism-based economy, these are numbers you were supposed to have at your fingertips. Why is it that you are not able to give those figures if it is that you are given a proper stewardship and accountability for the monies that are allocated to you? So it's very easy for us to, you know, just go on a platform and go, you know, on the stage and, you know, for your budget delivery, you say, yes, we want more money because, you know, we are being oppressed and we're calling for constitutional change in that regard. But the reality is that with greater, you know, financial allocations, it's supposed to come greater financial responsibility. And thus far, the THA has not demonstrated any such financial responsibility. Just look at the Auditor General's report for the last 10 or 15 years. You know, they always complain about it. They say the THA does not provide bank balances, they don't provide bank books, they don't provide sometimes even checks to justify payments that they've made. You know, their accounts are never in order, the books are never present, they could never justify figures for, you know, monies that they have, you know, disbursed. So therefore, in those circumstances, you know, it's almost like you're given a spoiled teenager, you know, a Lamborghini, a brand new Lamborghini, and saying, well, you know, you go and do as you please with it. You know, he goes, he wrecks the Lamborghini, and he comes back to you and you say, okay, all right, let me give you a Porsche, or let me give you some other supercar, maybe a McLaren, So that's the type of behavior that we are seeing. And I am always for greater development, greater capital investment in Tobago, greater infrastructural development, greater investment in Tobago. I am all for that, and let's understand that we are a business chamber, so of course business that is coming to Tobago is good for Tobago, but we are also responsible enough and mature enough to be able to say to Tobago and Tobagonians and to the leaders in the THA, with the greater financial allocations you are calling for, there must also be greater financial accountability, and that sort of being able to say, hey, listen, this is where I have spent the money. This is the account of my stewardship.
Well, in terms of the money and the allocation, walk me through what you thought of the allocation, and from the business chamber lens, from your perspective and the body you represent, where should some of this monies go to in terms of what aspects of development? I know yesterday he would have mentioned even issues in terms of climate change. All that seemed to be on the agenda, speaking to the moment, speaking to the ever-changing times we're in. Walk me through the allocation, and the allocation based on what was said as opposed to what is the reality of Tobago and where this money should go.
Right, okay, and you see, you use the correct word there, Jason, reality. Now, we have to understand that every year this Tobago THA budget presentation is really just an exercise in sophistry. It's an exercise whereby you basically go through the motions, but you don't have that ability to really make those decisions, because first of all, your allocations are tied to whatever the total national budget is. At this point, you don't even know what the total national budget will be. So even the timing of it, you ask yourself, what really is the point of you saying, well, I would want to allocate X amount for this, X amount for that, Y amount for this, Z amount for this, when really and truly it's just a wish list that you are putting forward, and it's a wish list that is not even tied to a proper reporting schedule where you could say, well, okay, look, last year you gave me this amount for this project. I have been able to do A, B, C, but however, these aspects are still outstanding. We've gotten, several different quotations, and as a result, this looks like the amount that we need. So, to even try to disaggregate the numbers is really just an exercise in futility, with the greatest of respect. And this is not, Mr. Augustine's fault or the THA's fault. It's just a fact of the matter of how the budgetary, allocations are scheduled, in that because it is tied to a portion of the national budget, which is delivered in September, then really and truly, your allocation is going to be based upon the Dispute Resolution Committee's finding. It's going to be within a certain percentage range of what the national budget is.
Let me ask you, Tobago, as you said, based on per capita, 60,000 plus people live on the island. The budget is 5.5, thereabout, in terms of the billion. And as you rightfully said earlier, per capita, folks in Tobago actually receive way more than even those who live here in Trinidad. There were questions posed on accountability and how the monies are handled. That can be the standard. And if that's the reality of the past, how do we fix things and change that unfortunate circumstance going forward in terms of the handling of the monies in Tobago, so that everyone can get an equal share of the pie and there can be true equity on the sister isle?
Well, the point is, Jason, and to be fair to Tobago, this is a national problem we have in terms of the lack of proper accountability by our leaders. So it's not just a Tobago issue. It's just that because Tobago is a microcosm of the society. It is magnified and exemplified in Tobago more than it is in Trinidad because, as you say, it's only a population of 60,000 you're dealing with. Right? But I just want to make it clear that this is not, to say, well, we're just talking about Tobago alone. In TNT in general, we've had trillions of dollars pass through our economy. And when you look around Trinidad and Tobago as a whole, you ask yourself, where has the money really gone? What do we have to show as a nation for it? So I would always like to, raise the level of the discourse and raise the level of the conversation, not just from a Tobago focus, but also to a national level, whereby we, the citizens, have to start calling upon our leaders for greater financial accountability and responsibility when they are dealing with matters of the public purse. So, I mean, our focus, of course, today is on Tobago, but I just want to make it clear that, it's not that Tobago is being targeted or singled out when we're talking about fiscal irresponsibility and lack of proper financial accounting.
No, of course. I mean, the reality is spot on. It's a Trinidad and Tobago issue, but the only reason I really pose the question, I'm thinking, seeing that they're a microcosm, it might be a quicker fix, it might be an easier fix, and Tobago can be used as a template. If we were able to sort out Tobago, we might be able to now take some of the lessons learned in the Tobago space and now apply it to the Trinidad and Tobago space. That was just my processing.
Yeah. So in that context, then, I mean, certainly there would be issues of constitutional reform that are involved because, in other words, you must ensure that your basic foundation document, which is our Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, that document now reflects the penalties that you are going to impose if persons do not spend from the public purse properly. You also want to ensure that you have things such as, more enforcement from bodies such as the Integrity Commission, because in other words, you must look at in terms of what someone came into office with. You can't come into office, into political office driving a B14 and you're driving out a Bentley after 3-4 years or 5 years. Then something has to be clearly wrong with the system if that's the case. So the thing is, we need to look at strengthening those institutions, which would be the watchdogs and the safeguards. And in terms of, for instance, even the joint select committees that I mentioned, you need now, as I say, legislative change to ensure that they now have some powers of sanction and penalty that they can impose when you fail to give proper accountability. Even the Auditor General's office needs to be revamped from the aspect of saying, well, look, if you don't give the Auditor General the answers, then you can be held responsible personally. And that's what it comes down to, because there's really no personal responsibility by any of our leaders for any mismanagement, misspending, for any frolic that they go on with monies from the public purse. I mean, remember leading into the THA elections, there was talk about the zipline project and all these other, things where they said, well, and all they got was a few feet of rope for the zipline monies that were expended, So the thing is, our history in TNT is littered with so many scandals, so many examples of profligate expenditure with no proper accountability that we as citizens, and particularly, you see, on programs such as this, Jason, and that's why I always encourage, these shows where we can now raise the level of the discussion, raise the level of awareness of the average Trinbagonian, because really and truly, Jason, part of the problem now is that there is a basic inertia, a lack of engagement by the public. I saw one of the newspapers did, a survey in relation to the upcoming local government elections. And, most people were disinterested, disengaged. They said, well, they didn't see any point because they don't think it made a difference, whether they voted or not, whether, they tried to change things, because it seemed that the more things change, the more they remain the same.
Let me tell you, Martin, we'll definitely touch base again soon. We're looking to wrap things up, but very strong talking points, and accountability is something that indeed, if we bring that into the public space, if that becomes part of our fabric, we will be such a better Twin Island state. Martin, all the best.
Of course, and we need to keep hammering that point and shaping the narrative,
Of course,
so that persons understand that our politicians are accountable to us.
Indeed. Martin George, always a pleasure. We will touch base soon.
Thank you very
always.
much. Have a great morning.
Yes, same to you, Martin. That's Martin George, the president of the Tobago Business Chamber.